Hello, Craig Smith from the Home Education Foundation in Palmerston North, New Zealand. We're talking about home education. That is, how can we as parents educate our children at home rather than send them out to some institution where they will get schooling and be, in the meantime, raised by the peer group and by strangers at this institution whose values, whose standards, whose worldview might be quite different than our own. In fact, sometimes they're quite hostile to our own. The schools, most of the state schools, not most, all of the state schools are based on a secular philosophy. That is, God, there's no place for God. The Lord Jesus Christ is pushed out. Well, the Bible repeatedly says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And because state schools can't even start there at first base, they've doomed themselves to never get onto wisdom because they're not starting at base one. And so when they're antithetical to our worldview in that regard, why do we continue to send our children there? They just get institutionalized. They get trained up in a pagan, a secular worldview, which is not what we as Christians want to see. And in addition to that, they're hanging around with all these other children. And conventional wisdom says children need lots of time with other children to teach them how to be children. Well, children don't need other children to teach them how to be children. They know how to be children. That comes natural. It's part of their fallen nature. And they're full of foolishness. So you get a bunch of children together, they just rev each other up to greater and greater heights of foolishness. It's not a good scene. Get them out of there. Rescue them from those places. Bring them home. Educate them properly yourself at home. So the question we wanted to deal with just now was, I forgot. Genevieve, prompt me here.
How can I lead my family in home educating?
How can I lead my family in home educating? Well, that's a good question. You want to talk about it all the time. I knew at some point that we were going to do this, and so whenever I was driving around in the car with the children and we drive past a school and the children would be out in the playground, I'd say, oh, look guys, they've let the prisoners out into the exercise yard. Look, there's another prison, there's another prison. So I would just subtly brainwash them like that into understanding that these institutions are not a good place. They're prisons as exercise yards. And I say the government says these children have to leave their homes and be dumped in these institutions for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, 9 months out of the year. I say it's not a good look. Well, you can stay at home. You don't have to go through this Mickey Mouse stuff, and we can have a lot more fun at home. And Mom and Dad will be able to read stories to you. We can play games and we can learn stuff, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So, how can I lead? You lead by preparing your children for that fact that they're not going to be part of that. You lead for the fact that you prepare them that their friends and your neighbors and a lot of your relatives even are going to think you're odd, you're strange, you're going to ruin my grandchildren. You know, that's the kind of thing you get from grandparents sometimes. Well, folks, if you care to read any of the studies that have been done, and there have been lots of studies done on how do home educated children turn out, you know, how do they compare with their conventionally schooled peers at the end of the day in academics and social activity, in social engagement, in getting careers and going on to, well, they compare extremely favorably. In fact, they seem to excel both academically and socially. Excel. There's one area where they are notably way behind, and that is home educated kiddies who are now beyond the age of 16 and 18. Now they're in the work world or they're at home full-time with their own families. The one area where they fall way behind their conventionally schooled peers who are at the same age and the same stage of life is that they do not watch as much TV per day as their conventionally schooled peers. The home educated kiddie, that's one thing they seem to have in common. They watch very little TV. It seems to be recognized as a universally bad experience watching TV. It's just not a good influence. And so how can you lead? You be an educator yourself at home. You be constantly educating yourself at home. Always have your nose in a book. You thoroughly enjoy reading, and you read to your children. That's how you can lead. And you get excited about learning and about the whole education process. And your enthusiasm and excitement can rub off on the children, and it'll set the tone for them too. But especially if they see you being a reader, that's a good thing. In fact, many authorities would say that the reading a parent does, that is, the reading a parent does for himself, just his own personal development, is almost more important than the reading that the parent does to the children. The reading the parent does for himself. So you be setting the pace. You always be a reader and be leading your family by reading all the time to yourself and reading to the family. That's the best way to lead in home education. Thank you.